All right, now let's talk about NXT from May the 20th. We're also going to get into Battleground a little bit later, but NXT was a fun show. There was some good stuff on here, but there was, as usual, some rough patches, but still the best wrestling show on TV, and I will put it up against any wrestling show in terms of having a lot of entertainment value while also having quality wrestling. It doesn't have to have the best of either, but it's an easy breezy 2 hours to watch, because 3 hours of Raw is tough to get through. It's almost impossible. And SmackDown, Jesus, I want to quit 30 minutes in. And Dynamite, barely watch it. So NXT by default is the easiest show to watch. And we're going to talk about Battleground later, because there's some issues with the tickets that I want to discuss. And also Shawn Michaels. He named who he thinks Mr. and Mrs. NXT are, and I'll talk about that later. But first, we start with the triple threat match for no reason. Javon Evans versus Shawn Legacy versus Ashante Lee Adonis. This was Javon Evans and Shawn Legacy basically going full Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega, bouncing all over the place, jumping off of everything, pointing and running and gunning, and this whole lot of springboard stuff. Just a whole lot of springboard stuff. It would have been... This match needed a heel. Ashante Adonis is supposed to be the heel, but he didn't feel like the heel in this match. He never really had control, and he never had the opportunity to build any heat. He was just a guy in the match to take the pin. Like, that's... I don't want to complain too much. I complained enough when it comes to Raw and SmackDown, but this match should have definitely been either Javon versus Ashante or Shawn versus Ashante one-on-one, so that he can actually get an opportunity to establish some heat. At this point, I think the idea of wrestling matches is about to be passé. It's about to just be a bunch of guys doing stuff to each other. The idea of slowing down, telling a story, and actually, getting somebody over is becoming dead. And Ricky Morton talked about this, and I want to talk about it here. Instead of doing our own video on it, hell, I still may do a video on it. But since some people actually listen to my NXT reviews, I want to bring it here. So he did a tweet called Heel Lives Matter. He said, in today's business, being a legitimate, authentic heel is a dying art. Why? Because 90% of the guys want the cheers, even when they're supposed to be the ones getting booed. Everybody wants the pop. Nobody wants the heat. But wrestling isn't about just the spotlight. It's about the story. And it takes two to tango. Without a true villain, there's no real hero. Without the boos, the cheers don't mean as much. So out of the few out there still committed to being the bad guy, keep doing it. The problem, Ricky, isn't always that everybody wants to be the hero. It's that nobody knows how to get heat, and nobody will allow you to get any heat. See, think about if this match was what I say it is. People would say it's substantially worse if it had just been one-on-one. And then Javon Evans, who does all of the flippity-doo-dah match things that he could possibly do, and does it in every match, is actually prevented from doing any of that stuff. He's beat to paste for 2 minutes or whatever, while the heel gets heat, and then he is forced to fire up and fight from underneath, because he's going to be underneath pretty much whoever. And he's forced to get the crowd into it based off of his psychology and what he could do, rather than just popping the crowd by doing springboards. People will say, oh no, that's a boring match. You're going to do 10-minute headlocks. It's like, goddamn, this is what the wrestling business is built on. It's not built on point and running gun offense like Kenny Omega and Shawn Legacy. Like, I don't got no problem with this Shawn Legacy guy. But I just see Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega. As soon as I see a guy pointing in the direction that he's going to run, I instantly lose interest. Stop this. Where did this come from? I have no idea where this came from. And now every other indie wrestler is doing this stuff. I hate it. I hate it so much. I really do. And then we also got our first run-in of the match. Well, our first interference. Ricky Starks was on commentary because this was an informal number one contenders match. Informal. And then as Ethan Page, who attacked Ricky Starks from behind, they were fighting outside the ring. Javon Evans, for no good reason at all, decided to jump onto them, springboard or onto them, knock everybody down in the middle of their fight. They're not even fighting him. They're just fighting. Got nothing to do with him. So that leaves Shawn Legacy alone with Ashante the Adonis. And Shawn Legacy actually beats him with his finish. And I was glad Shawn Legacy won the match because he looked pretty good. I and many others are saying, hey, maybe we just bring this guy on up. You know, he seemed to fit the rest of the roster, especially since they got rid of Nathan Fraser. You know, you need another speedy guy on the roster. The problem is he needs to slow down and learn how to work. You know, this is a him problem and a Javon Evans problem. We get it. You're explosive. You can do all of this stuff. At the same time, you need to build some heat, you know, and that's a very important part of the match is building heat. And these triple threat matches don't allow it to build heat. And the fact that everybody, you know, the guys want to be on offense all the time so that they can get the pops and the crowd can stay on top of it. But that's not what it's about, you know. So nobody stays down too long because you got to get up and do the next thing. So Ricky Starks and Ethan Page are yelling at each other, screaming at each other in Ava's office. So she starts screaming back. Ethan Page refused to wrestle Ricky Starks because he wanted a match. So Ricky Starks offered him a title shot, and then Ethan Page accepted. Then Ava said they don't make matches, she makes matches, and then, well, she made the match because she just had to do it on her time and make it seem like it was her idea. Ava is the worst. She's awful, bro. She's the heel every time she's on television. I don't know why. She must be a heel every time she's on TV. Anyway, I saw somebody say that Ricky Starks was more interesting before he won this title. And I actually agree. I'm not saying that there's something wrong with Ricky Starks' booking, but he's been tied to Shawn Spears and Ethan Page since he got there. And it's been, 3 months maybe? Three, maybe 4 months? And he has not really broadened his horizons when it comes to working programs. And he's not really working programs. Most of these storylines have been very short. He's been tied up with Ethan Page almost the entire time he's been in NXT. You know, the whole thing with Wesley kind of died out pretty quickly. He had, I think, a one-off match with Lexis King. I think he had a one-off match with Wesley. I think it might have been 2 matches with Wesley. But then they gave him this belt, and he's been screwing around with Ethan Page the entire time. And then, of course, he had to wrestle Shawn Spears to get it. So they haven't really given him like their best players for him to work with. But he has definitely cooled off since he got to NXT. He was a very hot commodity. And, of course, in the past, you would say a guy like Ricky Starks, they would have shot him straight to the main event. Especially when you consider that's what they did with Jordan Grace and Stephanie Vaquer and Julia. They shot them straight to the top. While when it comes to Ricky Starks, they trying to make him start from the middle. But I think it's a good reason, you know, to do that. Because of Obafemi and Trick Williams and those guys who are, you know, they have a little bit more time in the brand. And at the time, they had roped Javon Evans into there as well. So it made sense why they did that. But I do agree that he's been cooled off quite a bit. They announced Jasper Troy and Tyra May Steele have won LFG, and they will have their debut matches at some point in the future in NXT. But Jasper Troy said he's going to make his impact tonight. And I was like, oh, okay, he's going to attack somebody. Who's he going to attack? And you know what? Can't complain about what he did. He decided, why waste our time going after the small fries when you can go after the big one? But first, we got to talk about the Obafemi Miles Bourne promo segment. It really didn't establish much of anything, except Miles Bourne talking about being underestimated and Obafemi telling him this ain't a Disney movie. You don't get a happy ending. You know, outside of that, this was a little long for them to do that, but it was okay, you know. And then Jasper Troy attacked Obafemi from, just knocked him down, with the big Vader attack with the belly and the arms, and you know what I mean. And Obafemi flopped on the mat. I think he may have hit him with another move. And then Miles Bourne came back to the ring and tried to help Obafemi up and got his hand slapped away. Then they had a little short stare down after Miles Bourne handed Obafemi the title. I gotta say, I didn't watch LFG. I didn't watch it at all. But I'm going to give this Jasper Troy kid some credit. If you're going to come into NXT and come in anywhere and talk about making a statement and you go after the top dog and he's a big guy, that's good. That's really good. I don't remember seeing either of these people in Evolve. I know that Tamara Mensah-Stock, who was Tyra May Steele, she's been in NXT for 2 years. Well, she's been under contract for 2 years. I don't know about this Jasper Troy guy. I have no idea how long he's been in developmental. Maybe I should have watched the show and I'm got an answer for it. But also, seemingly, people are not happy with these people winning. There were other people that they thought were better. And it's typical of Tough Enough or in these kinds of projects. I can guarantee you, whoever your favorite was on that show is likely going to get looped back into NXT or Evolve anyway. And it always happens. WWE gets these programs, they have one winner, but then somebody who lost ends up being more important. Like, there's a lot of talk about that sexy BJ Ray fellow. This is the second show they had him on. They had him on whatever that show was on, what was that network? It wasn't Tubi, Hulu. They had a Hulu show, and that sexy BJ Ray fellow was on there too. So I can see he's been under contract, I think, for a while, and I haven't seen him anywhere. I think he popped up on NXT to do some cameos, but outside of that, he hasn't done much of anything. But I can see him being sort of the new Miz, where he's super obnoxious. Everybody thinks that he's obnoxious, but because he's obnoxious to the people behind the scenes, they feel, okay, he's easily very obnoxious on TV as well, and that if he can get it to translate to the audience, he might be able to make some money. That was an old regime, however, that gave The Miz that opportunity. I don't see Triple H saying, oh yeah, we're going to put The Miz on television. If he had control back in 2004, I think The Miz would have got fired. So we don't know what's going to happen here, but that guy is really good at getting heat on Twitter and making people upset. So hopefully he'll show up on NXT at some point and actually wrestle. But I heard that a couple of the girls were pretty good on that show, but we'll see over time. I guess as they trickle into Evolve and such. Anyway, Jasper Troy attacked Obafemi. Pretty ballsy decision, I must say. And I got no problem with that. They did a vignette for Jordynne Grace, who says she's here to compete for the top spot, that both her and Stephanie Vaquer sacrificed a lot to be here, and that Stephanie Vaquer has been dominant. But today, this Sunday, they're going to find out who's the best. Just very straightforward promo. Stephanie Vaquer had a sit-down promo with Kelly Kincaid, who I forgot still worked there. She talked about failing her first tryout, but using it as motivation, and that all the blood, sweat, and tears and crying she did was necessary to get here, and that Jordynne Grace is going to be her toughest challenge. But while Jordynne Grace conquered TNA, Stephanie Vaquer conquered continents. I was like, okay. She also talked about being inspired by Rey Mysterio, which I have to say there is quite a few women who are inspired by Rey Mysterio. Most of them tend to be, I guess it's the Lucha Libre stuff, you know? Like, she liked working in Mexico and working in Lucha Libre. And I would imagine Rey Mysterio would be very inspirational to this generation. But she ain't the only woman. There's like quite a few women who are like, I love Rey Mysterio. I mean, maybe it's because he's so small, you know? And they figure if he's small and he can do it, then I'm small and I can do it. I don't know, lady. Lola Vice is backstage. She was talking to Stephanie Vaquero for a second. It got interrupted by Fatal Influence. Fatal Influence is still throwing jabs at each other. And JC James sets up Fallon Henley for a match with Lola Vice, which happened later on in the night. This made us 3 for 4 on run-ins or interference, as JC James tried to help Fallon Henley only to fail, and she actually ended up distracting Fallon Henley for Lola Vice to win with the spinning back fist. Where it's taken too long with this Fatal Influence thing. It's been almost 2 months, and it's taken them too long to break up. Also, no Jasmine Nix again. This is the second week in a row Jasmine Nix is not around, and I haven't heard that she was injured, so I'm starting to get concerned. You know, usually when people disappear from NXT with no sort of response and then they're not mentioned at all, they've been fired. And Jasmine Nix actually has been improving, so I don't see why they would fire her. I'm just not sure what's going on. I haven't seen that she was released either. So maybe she's injured. I don't know. But Fallon Henley has lost pretty much every match she's been in for like 6 months. And Lola Vice, hey, she shows up every once in a while. She wins some, she loses some, and then she disappears again. All while doing hip gyrations. I'm not sure what's the next move for Lola Vice, but it seems like she might be next in terms of the women's title or the U.S. title. I would probably say the U.S. title at this point. But I like Lola Vice. And I think she has been harmed tremendously by that upsurge of new female talent, especially some that's still coming in, that she's been definitely put to the wayside. But she's going to end up working herself back in. All right. So Josh Briggs, he dedicated his match to his Inamura fat Japanese partner. And then I had to suffer through Josh Briggs versus Shawn Spears. Talk about wanting to put a pencil through your head. My goodness. There was no way to survive this match. We were 2 for 2 for run-ins because Izzy Dane kicked Josh Briggs in the head from behind. That allowed Shawn Spears to win by roll-up. Then as Shawn Spears and the Culling decided they were going to beat up Josh Briggs after the match, Hank and Tank ran down there to help out. So that's going to set up a 6-man tag they're going to have at the pay-per-view that we don't really need and I don't want. But we'll talk about that when we get there. All right, OTM defeated Chase University 2.0. They just crushed them, pretty much. The one match on the show that did not have a run-in, to my knowledge. OTM. They also ended up with Jada Parker's theme song, or her original theme song, which I know she's shared with OTM. But when I heard that theme song, I was like, wait a second, what's happening here? Speaking of Jada Parker, Thea Hale, who was wearing an eye patch after Tatum Paxley pulled her eyeball out of her head, she walked up to Tatum Paxley to try to, like, what the hell, man? Like, it was completely the wrong response. All right, this person tried to blind you, and you walk up like, what the hell? I know how you feel. Because Paxley's like, you don't understand how I feel. Everybody that I love is leaves. And Thea Hale actually does. Because, Chase University. And the amount of people who are fired who are in Chase University is greater than the number of people who have been fired that have been partners of Tatum Paxley. So as Thea is kneeling to talk to Tatum Paxley, she gets attacked by Jada Parker, who, I don't know, hit her in the did she hit her with her butt cheek, or she sucker punched her or something? Then Jada Parker says she also understands Tatum Paxley, and she was like, really? And she was like, no. Oh shit. So Jada Parker is doing random side missions at this point because she ain't getting that title no time soon. And Sol Ruka seems to be jammed up in some other stuff, with the Women's North American title. But let's talk about that while we're here. The Women's North American Championship number one contenders match, essentially. The deal was that if Kalani Jordan defeated Zarya, she can get the match. And she defeated Zarya. So we were 4 out of 5 when it comes to run-ins. Because Sol Ruka actually cost Zarya the match. She distracted her. Same thing as happened earlier. Somebody gets on the ring apron. First it was JC Jane. This time it's Sol Ruka. And you get knocked off the ring apron. And oh no, you turn around and just basically walk right into a finish. And in this instance, I believe it was a roll-up. And Kalani Jordan wins. But this match was actually very solid. It was actually one of the better matches on the show. Kalani Jordan is very slippery, extremely agile. She works well with Zarya's powerhouse style. The unfortunate bit here is that Zarya, my goodness, I keep putting my head in my hands when it comes to Zarya because I keep thinking about the video packages that they put together for this girl. And then also, I was thinking of what they're doing in AEW with Megan Bayne. Like, Megan Bayne is basically fucking Wonder Woman. Like, they're not doing enough with her in AEW. Clearly, they're not booking the girl to her potential. Otherwise, she would not have lost the match so far. Zarya should be similar, in a sense. I know she's not as gigantic as Megan Bayne. But this storyline that they're doing with Sol Ruka has taken away so much of the shine from Zarya. It has overexposed her character. It's not the right move. In a company where we need more Luna Vachons and Bull Nakanos and that style of character, these nasty, vicious, go back to what I said about heels, these very nasty and vicious heels. We got another girl playing makeup in the locker room. Like, why do we have so many of these girls that are doing the same goddamn thing? Why can't somebody be different? Why can't somebody put some edge or some danger in the women's division? Why has everybody got to be cutesy best friend, TikTok friends with everybody? It's not necessary. They're completely fucking this girl over. And she's got part of the look. You need to go ahead and go the whole way with it. But this whole love thing that she's got going on with Sol Ruka is very weird. And I don't like it. I don't like this storyline. And it's been going on for long enough. It's time to go ahead and turn Zarya heel and get out of this situation. But they're booking Sol Ruka versus Kalani Jordan at Battleground. That ought to be fun. Especially since I guess Kalani's going to have to work heel. But I'm not so sure she's got it in her. But she's going to have to try. She's really going to have to try. Tony D'Angelo cut a promo. Says that betrayal never comes from enemies. Says he can't understand Stacks because he's not a coward. He thought they were cut from the same cloth. They grew up together. And Stacks has always been his right-hand man. But he's only shown Stacks what he needed to see, as Stacks wanted to be the shot caller. Now he thinks he can handle things himself, but Stacks' problem is that he's only about himself. But when you're a boss, you have to look at the bigger picture. Says there won't be any betrayals on Sunday. It's just going to be Tony D kicking your face in. I still believe that they should have some kind of stipulation to their match. I don't think you need to go out in there and these guys start doing wrestling moves to each other. I just don't see the need for it. I think they need to do some other things. They probably need some weapons and stuff, When you betray somebody on this level, I don't think a regular match is suitable. Anyway, I love this promo. It's a pretty good promo. Tony D'Angelo is a great character. I don't care if he doesn't go to the main roster. He's good right here. All right, so the main event guys, Trick Williams and Joe Hendry, they both did musical acts. Earlier in the night, Trick Williams performed his song Average Joe with Booker T as his hype man, even though he never left commentary. This was extremely bad. It was very, very bad. The lip syncing was Soul Train bad, and the crowd was not really into it. It seemed like Trick Williams, who apparently wrote the song, performed the song, but didn't know the words of the goddamn song. It was the shits. Now, it felt like it was supposed to be bad on purpose because he was smiling the whole way through it, like he couldn't hold character, which maybe he was supposed to be bad on purpose because this thing was bad. Joe Hendry, on the other hand, played his concert. He played the guitar, referred to Trick as Mello's bitch, then played a scene from Halloween Havoc. I think that was Halloween Havoc 2022 or 2023. It was one of the two. Or it might have been one of the pandemic Halloween Havocs. In any event, they put Joe Hendry's face on one of the zombies or whatever that scared Trick Williams and had him running away from it. It was pretty funny. It was pretty good. So Trick Williams crashed the party and said that was years ago and nobody lives in the past. He got in the ring, talked about winning the TNA title, and then sucker punched Joe Hendry in the face. He tried to beat him up, but then Joe Hendry smashed him with the guitar and hit him with the standing ovation, which is like a choke slam kind of move. And Joe Hendry actually went off the air in control of this thing, which of course raised my eyebrows because in WWE, that is the opposite of what you do when you're going into a pay-per-view. Typically, the guy who's going to lose is the guy who's in control. I don't know, man. They seem to be teasing that your boy Joe Hendry might not win. Maybe. But we'll talk about that because we need to get into Battleground. Alrighty, NXT Battleground will be held this Sunday, May 25th, 7:30 p.m. from the Yuengling Center in Tampa, Florida. The current setup is for 8,152. They have, as of right now, distributed 6,614 tickets. The show looks like it might sell out, depending on how the pricing goes. I'm going to take a guess that they get to about 7,500 out of that building, which is still not a sellout, but it's close. So I think they're going to get close, but I don't think they're going to sell it out completely. Now, this has been an issue with NXT because they send NXT to Tampa as part of a package. And this package meant that there was going to be another episode of NXT, a regular NXT TV taping, out of the Yuengling Center on the 27th. And that's been canceled, according to WrestleTix. It says WWE's NXT Live on the CW event, originally scheduled for Tuesday, May 27th at the Yuengling Center in Tampa, Florida, has been canceled. At the time of cancellation, approximately 1,700 tickets had been distributed. The NXT event was part of WWE's Memorial Day weekend takeover in Tampa, which included Saturday night's main event, Battleground, and Monday Night Raw. As of now, Saturday night's main event and Monday Night Raw are nearing sellout status at the Yuengling Center, while Battleground has surpassed 6,000 tickets distributed. This is a lot of wrestling to put in one place at one time. Now, I want people to recognize what's going on here. WWE is doing this, and it seems like a good idea because you get to have this package of shows, and I'm pretty sure you could probably buy all the tickets and get a discount and have some kind of VIP thing or whatever. But having this sort of weekend stay it does a tremendous amount of damage to some of the product, because now you're forcing people to make a choice. People don't have infinite money, and the tickets for these events are expensive. Even for Raws and Saturday Night's main events, the tickets are not going down. So you're asking people, hey, do you want to go to Saturday Night's main event? Do you want to go to Raw, or do you want to go to NXT? If they got the money, why don't they go to Saturday Night's main event or go to Raw rather than going to NXT? And then you give them 2 NXT shows. The NXT show should have just been 2 for 1. If you buy a ticket to Battleground, that ticket should still be used for the TV taping, I guess. Because it seemed pretty silly to me that you would do this. They kind of overshot their hand here. Now that the event has been canceled, they're going to tape the show back in the Performance Center. So the show will air in its normal time in a normal place. But the plan was to tape it out of the Yuengling Center. That was kind of embarrassing for NXT. Less than 2,000 tickets sold. But then when you compare it to the fact that it's coming on after Raw, which is after their pay-per-view, which is after Saturday Night's main event, where John Cena is going to wrestle. John Cena is wrestling that weekend, and you're going to go to the show with Joe Hendry? Probably not. And then you're going to go to the show the next week with no card announced? Probably not. Probably not. It is what it is. Just got to be realistic. It's kind of stupid. But this is what the tiny hats over in TKO are up to. I hate to put it on them, but this is what they're doing. And they're going on interviews and admitting that this is what they're doing. These are not smart people. But AEW is doing something similar, though. They're doing these residencies in Chicago or wherever, where they're just going to run the market dry. Hey, we're going to run a bunch of shows in the same town, week after week after week. And everybody's going to be looking like, damn, that's a whole lot of TV in one place. You're asking a lot of the audience to be able to carry those shows. Now, the AEW shows are in smaller venues. And the Yuengling Center is a pretty big building. It's not a small concert venue. And I think that WWE should, not they won't, but they should consider whatever kind of venue that GCW would run, whatever kind of venue that AEW would run. That's what they need to do with NXT. So like the 2300 arena, because MLW runs that arena. NXT's running the arena too. They should run those. Like NXT can do 6,000, 8,000, depending on the town. But for a nice full building, they should be running mid-level buildings. They should be running theaters, concert halls, stuff like that. That way it's almost pure profit when they do run those buildings, instead of trying to run like NBA arenas. Like it's NXT, man. Like, cut the people some slack. And plus, I want it to look different. I don't want WWE in all 3 buildings, in this building 3 days in a row, and it looks the same. Like, that ain't cool. But they were trying to make this thing special. And I forgot about this. Battleground, I believe, will be running head to head with AEW's pay-per-view, Double or Nothing. So that's another thing that probably affected tickets in that area. And it's just not smart business decision. Maybe it was smart. Maybe the idea is to make people spend money on WWE this weekend so they can't buy this AEW pay-per-view. Maybe that's the plan. I don't know if it'll work though, because the AEW fans, they seem pretty determined to order that show. And if it means going outside, they're probably not interested in going outside. So let's get into the predictions of the show though. All right. There's 6 matches on the show, which is about how many there usually are on the show. The first match, Hank and Tank team with Josh Briggs versus The Culling, which is Brooks Jensen, Nico Vance, and Shawn Spears. Shawn Spears is on pay-per-view. They're trying to trick you into believing that Shawn Spears is some premium level wrestler that you should definitely watch him wrestle, and they're wrong. Josh Briggs certainly don't want to watch him. I wonder what match will be on AEW Double or Nothing while this thing is on, because I'll probably be looking at that. Who wins? I'm going to guess the Culling wins, because Hank and Tank need opponents, and this is a good way to get them some opponents. So, how about that? Next, NXT Women's North American title. Sol Ruka versus Keilani Jordan. All right. They're still teasing the Sol Ruka Zarya breakup. I don't think that breakup is going to happen with Sol Ruka not being the champion. So Sol Ruka is going to win the match. I wonder if they're going to turn it into a spot fest, or is Keilani Jordan going to attempt to work heel in this match? But since she's the most spot festy of the two, I don't think so. Well, it's a toss up, because Sol Ruka is like 99% spots, and Keilani Jordan is like 99.5% spots. Like, she can still reverse things and stuff like that. So it ought to be pretty spotty. But I expect Sol Ruka to win. I don't see any reason why she shouldn't win, if we're being honest. Next, Channing Stacks Lorenzo. We could just call him Stacks by now. Could drop that Channing part. There's no Italians named Channing. Not one. Zero. Give him a name. Give him a good, strong Italian name like Paul. There's so many gangsters named Paul, like Paul Castellano. Give him a good, strong Jim. A John, a Chuck, Charlie. Channing. There's no mob bosses named Channing anywhere. Just call him Stacks Lorenzo. His first name is, nobody ever calls him by his first name anyway. That's kind of how it works. Versus Tony D'Angelo. All right. I do believe Stacks is probably going to win this match. It makes sense to have Stacks win, especially if we're going to go along with this. I don't think this is going to be the only match they have, clearly. And if they're going to build up to some kind of cage match or weapons match of some description, maybe Stacks creates his own family, then he has to win this match first. And I'm actually a big fan of the idea of Stacks maybe starting his own family and him being the boss. But he's more like not Michael Corleone. What was the name of his brother? Sonny. More like Sonny Corleone, where he's kind of fiery and flying off the handle all the time. That would be a good way to turn the storyline around, where you put Tony D'Angelo in the underdog position. He's outnumbered because there's like these new guys moving in, and Stacks now has his own crew. And that would actually be very cool. I'm not sure. Maybe there would be some evolved guys you can bring in to put with Stacks. He could just say he's building his own crew. That could be cool. I like that. That and getting rid of that Channing shit, you might actually have something there when it comes to Stacks that you can do with in a long run storyline. But I definitely think Stacks needs to win and keep this thing going. And maybe write Tony D'Angelo off TV for a while. Let Stacks chase some titles. Chase the main belt. Maybe chase that North American title for a little bit. And then re-enter Tony D'Angelo after a couple of weeks. And have Stacks build his own little family. And, do something cool there. So I'm going to go with Stacks. Next, Stephanie Vecchia versus Jordan Grace singles match, NXT Women's Championship. Now, this one's a tough one, because conventional wisdom would say there's no good reason for Stephanie Vecchia to lose this title. But conventional wisdom also said there was no good reason for Julia to have lost this title so soon. Stephanie Vecchia, she's most definitely going to be wanted on the main roster. I could see it coming. But who does the main roster want more, Stephanie or Jordan Grace? It could quite possibly be that Jordan Grace is going to get called up before Stephanie Vacquer. Personally, I think they both need to stay in NXT for a while, especially since Julia and Roxanne are both been introduced to that ecosystem up on the main roster. And it's going to take some time for them to find their footing. I don't think you just want to keep adding new characters, even though I think they're going to do it anyway with the draft. I would keep both of them in NXT and turn this into a nice little rivalry. Have Stephanie Vacquer win the match, but by the skin of her teeth. And then maybe we go with Jordynne Grace getting frustrated, maybe turn her heel, and we do a run there. I definitely think that this being a babyface match is going to hurt the match a little bit, because I am always a fan of heel babyface dynamics. I don't like shades of gray. I don't like face versus face. I'm not really a big fan of that, even though it can work sometimes, but you have to be like Hogan and Warrior in order for it to work. This is not Hogan and Warrior, clearly, right? So I definitely think that Stephanie Vacquer is going to win. It's difficult, though, because if Jordynne Grace doesn't win this time, what do you do with her? You know? That's the question. Because this is her second or third championship match. She hasn't had a single feud in NXT yet. So she probably needs to settle down and do some feuds. And maybe even consider Jordynne Grace for the North American Championship, if you're going to keep her in NXT for a while. But I think when Shawn Michaels said that Stephanie Vacquer was Mrs. NXT, I think he meant it. So Stephanie Vacquer is going to win the match. Next, Joe Hendry versus Trick Williams, TNA World Championship. All right, I think that the likelihood that Trick Williams wins the TNA title is about 80-20. I think you got about a 20% chance that Trick Williams wins the TNA World title. The reason why I put it so high is because TNA will be involved with WWE's Worlds Collide show. And the Worlds Collide show obviously is going to be an NXT AAA crossover show on June the 7th. And TNA has already announced that they're going to have some wrestlers wrestle on the show. They've announced some of them already. We don't know what the full card's going to be. We'll figure out when we get there, right? So you have that, but you also have on May 23rd, there's going to be a TNA pay-per-view event that Trick Williams is going to wrestle, and it's going to be a tag team match where it's going to be Trick Williams and, is it Frankie Kazarian? Yeah, Trick Williams and Frankie Kazarian versus Joe Hendry and Elijah. This is going to be on Friday. So on Friday the 23rd, they're going to wrestle in a tag team match. And then they're going to have their actual title match on Sunday. So the likelihood that maybe Trick wins the title, because they're doing so much crossover stuff right now, I'm going to give it higher than usual. I still don't think it's going to happen, but I think his chances are higher than they would have been, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago, because of how mixed up NXT is with TNA right now. I'm pretty sure, it's still not going to happen. So I'm going to go with Joe Hendry wins, but I'm going to give Trick Williams a pretty good chance of winning. And I also think he's going to win that tag team match. That tag team match is definitely a winnable match. And I don't know why he's tag teaming with Kazarian. Kazarian sucks. He's just so washed. Everybody is obsessed with washed ass wrestlers now. Everybody's company is full of washed fucking guys. Anyway, the NXT Championship match. Obafemi versus Miles Bourne. I gotta tell you, I don't know what Miles Bourne finisher is. I should tell you that I don't think that he's gonna win this match. It's possible. I guess if I had to put a numeric advantage on it, I'll probably say it's probably a 5% chance he's gonna win. Because we don't know what this Jasper Troy guy is up to. We don't know if Charlie Dempsey or Tavion Heights or whatever might try to help him. So there's the outside chance of outside interference that could help Miles Bourne win. So I'm going to say he's got a puncher's chance. But there's no good reason to switch the title off of Obafemi right now. Shawn Michaels says that either Obafemi or Trick Williams are Mr. NXT. And I'm looking at this right now and saying that it's probably Obafemi. He is on a different level right now in terms of performing. The only thing that's weird about it is that line of hair right at the beginning of his locks that seems to stick straight up. It's very weird. It's so distracting too, because it's all I could see when he was cutting his promo was this, with his hair, like with the young lady, because I'm pretty sure it was a woman who did this, parted his hair, and you can see like the hairline. It's just so weird that he got like a gated community on the top of his head. It's just not, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look right. Hopefully he changes that. Mr. NXT, Obafemi. And Miles Bourne, good contender. You know, I like the idea that they're taking the risk and putting him in this match. I love that idea. I wish the main roster would do it more. Except, you know, they're kind of doing that with Logan Paul, but it would be nice if like a low card guy would get a shot at the title every once in a while. Get a nice little pay-per-view built around him so he can showcase his character and showcase some of what he can do. And it's an underappreciated guy, and he can go in there and fight his heart out and lose. And since, you know, there's other things that are selling the show, Obafemi's match doesn't have to be the biggest match on the show, because he's not the guy drawing the show. Joe Hendry is at this point. He's got technically the more important title. He technically will more than likely be main eventing the show. And then you also got the big women's match with Jordynne Grace and Stephanie Vaquer. The only problem is when I look up and down this card, it takes me back to my original statement when I started this video. There's not a lot of true heels on this show. You know, like not a lot of dastardly evil people on the show. Like Obafemi's a dominator. He's probably the top heel in NXT. But he doesn't cheat. He doesn't need to. He's basically Brock Lesnar. Stephanie Vaquer versus Jordynne Grace, they're both baby faces. Joe Hendry and Trick Williams, well, Trick Williams is a heel, but he's not a fully formed heel. He's not a nasty, brooding, you know, violent heel. He's a cocky heel. Tony D'Angelo and Stax, well, Stax is a heel. Stax is kind of a legitimate heel. We'll see how far they let him go in this match. Sol Ruca versus Kalani Jordan. Well, Kalani Jordan is a heel, but she's a heel because she wears darker makeup than she was wearing before. But her moveset is exactly the same. Her vocal tone is exactly the same. Music is exactly the same. It's not really a good heel setup. And then, of course, the culling are true heels because Shawn Spears is at least good at that. He got a lot of heat with me. He got tons of heat. He got nuclear heat with me. But other than that, he actually is the only person who's allowed to try to get some heat here. Like, this is a big problem across the wrestling spectrum of guys not having any heat. It's a problem. But this show ought to be fun. I ought to enjoy every match on the show. You can't complain about that. So, let me know what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you folks later. Peace out.
No one does it better.